Hello there, my name is Ismail, and today we're going to be doing a comparison between Blender and Houdini. So this is not really a fair comparison as these two applications are completely different from each other. Although they are used to produce the same content, 3D content, their workflow and their purpose is a bit different. It's the equivalent of comparing a Tesla Cybertruck to a Ford F-150. I mean, look at these two things, this and this here. So something like this would take you a month or two to model in any application, in any 3D application. But something like a Cybertruck, well, let's try it and see. Well, let's see here. Let's see how long it would take me. So just a few polygons. I'm not even deleting the default cube. I'm just adding a loop there, and then push this up, and so there is a slanting. This window is a bit slanting, so I will just add another loop there and another loop there, and then select this edge, scale it in the x-axis, it like that, and you have your Cybertruck. I mean, I'm done. If you want to be fancy, then you can also add in a few extra polygons, but remember, we are restricted to how many polygons are these? 6 polygons, and I think we've already gone over the restriction, but yeah, sometimes you have to be a bit fancy, and we are good with the Cybertruck. You're done. I mean, you can add wheels if you want, but that's a simple circle. What's the restriction on the polygons for that? I'm not sure. Let's just use 16, but you get the point. It's comparing the two. Comparing Blender to Houdini is the equivalent of comparing Cybertruck to Ford. And what you choose as what application you choose to be the Cybertruck and the F-150 depends on what you're trying to do. So for example, if you're trying to model in Blender, it's the equivalent of modeling a Cybertruck. It's very easy and you just go in and go out. If you tried modeling anything in Houdini, I think it's the equivalent of modeling this thing here. It would take you a few times. It would take you a few hours. It's mostly used for procedure stuff. And again, if you're trying to do procedure things, doing procedure stuff in Blender is the equivalent of modeling an F-150. And if you're trying to do something like simulation, again, it would be the equivalent of modeling an F-150 instead of modeling the Cybertruck. It would be way more hard to do simulations in Blender and procedure stuff in Blender than it would be in Houdini. That's my analogy here. That's what I'm trying to make. That's the point I'm trying to make. I don't know if you get it, but yeah, the level of difficulty is going to be different depending on what you're doing. So let's look at some things Houdini does really well that Blender would struggle a bit. So they have released a new Houdini 18 sneak peek, and so let's just talk over it and maybe just do a reaction video of this video. Let's see. Yeah, so let me just turn on the volume just a bit here, so that let me just fast forward a bit. Yeah, so right away, this thing here, this intro thing here, if you tried to do that in Blender, yeah, good luck. Yeah, so for this here, this is something I think CG Geek did. He handled it very well. He did, I think he simulated, was it 20 million trees? So just showing that Blender can handle that very efficiently, and it can do very well if you're trying to do something like this. But what would be different in the workflow or in the approach is that in this reel here, they show that they didn't just sculpt or model the entire terrain. They kind of use procedural modeling, which is the thing Houdini is known for mostly, and you can see how they're doing it here. Again, it kind of makes it a little way easier to do, and even produces more realistic results than you would if you're doing sculpting and things like that. So yeah, that's one direction that Houdini is very powerful compared to Blender. This is one direction that I wish Blender kind of pushed for, going procedure, because there was an interview done by the guys from the Flipped and Normals channel, interviewing Andrew Price from Blender Guru. Let me just see if I can find the interview here. It's a very interesting interview. So this here, and they talked about a lot of things that I found really interesting. And one of the things they talked about is that Blender is finding it very hard to stand out in the industry because every application has kind of established itself as something in the industry, because the 3D industry is a bit broad, and there are different segments of it. So you have the ArchViz, that is architecture visualization. You have simulations, that is Houdini's place, and ArchViz is mostly 3ds Max area. And then you have animation and game development, that is Maya's field. I have motion graphics, that is Cinema 4D. So Blender is very good at doing some of these things very well. Maybe not as well as those specific programs, but it can handle them. And what they talked about is that if Blender wants to kind of push through the industry and become a standard in the industry, it has to become best known for something in that industry. Because Blender right now, it can do a lot of things, but it's not best at any of the things. So if Blender can do sculpting, but it can't do it better than ZBrush. It can do simulations, but it can't do it better than Houdini. It can do ArchViz, but not better than 3ds Max. It can do animation, but not as good as Maya. But it can do these other things. So if you're trying to compare Blender and 3D Max, 3D Max would beat Blender in ArchViz, but it wouldn't beat it in sculpting, because I don't even think 3D Max has a sculpting side. I'm not very versed with 3ds Max, but yeah, it doesn't have anything like that. If you're trying to compare Maya and Blender, Maya would beat it in animation and in animation, but it wouldn't beat it in any other things. And Blender is always like that. It's good at a lot of things, but never stands out in one particular thing. And what they talked about is that it should find a field where it kind of, I don't know how to term it, but where it kind of is the master in that field. And which made a lot of sense until I kind of scroll down into the comments. And one of the comments, one guy said that the idea for Blender was that it should be an application that allows an artist to kind of imagine something and bring it to life. So that's why it can't really kind of be best known for something like maybe 3D modeling or sculpting, because then it would be lacking in other fields. Because if you're very good at sculpting, that means that you're not going to be very good at animation or anything. It's very hard to be best at everything. You need to stand, if you are going to stand out at something, you're going to lack in other areas. Like you see all these applications, Maya, 3ds Max, Cinema 4D, Houdini, they all stand out in one area, but kind of lack in other areas. You always need a different application to approach that. And Blender's idea was to come in and kind of solve that, give an artist a tool that will help them kind of tackle every aspect of the 3D animation process or 3D content creation process without having to sell their leg or kidney or something to produce their ideas, to bring their ideas to life. So that's what, and that came at a cost of not standing out at any of these other fields. So it has to be good at every other thing, so as to allow the artist to be able to kind of create anything in whatever field they imagine. If you want to go into ArchViz, you can still do ArchViz in Blender. If you want to do animation, you can still do that. If you want to do sculpting, you can do that. If you want to do game stuff, you can do that. I recognize that the Blender game engine was removed, but again, there are other free tools that you can use Blender with to kind of still achieve that stuff. So yeah, so it made a lot of sense, but then I looked at Houdini where Houdini was good at. Because right now, if you compare Blender to any other applications, I will see that Maya can beat Blender in animation, but you can still use Blender to produce what Maya does. It may take a bit of time. It might be a bit harder than in Maya, but you will still produce what Maya does. If you're trying to compare Blender to 3ds Max, you can still produce whatever 3ds Max does, but it might take you a little bit more time and may be a bit harder, but you will still produce what Maya does. Cinema 4D with their motion graphics, maybe that's a bit harder because in motion graphics, Blender is still a bit lacking, and yeah, that's the same thing I want to get to here because if you're comparing Blender to Houdini, most of the things Houdini can do, it's impossible to do in Blender, like right off, impossible to do. Let's just again take a look at this sneak peek and just show you how difficult some of these things would be in Blender. So let me just skip ahead. This is normal things, modeling and stuff. This is things you can do already in Blender. Not that hard. Cloth simulations you can still do in Blender, maybe not as good, and yeah, but still you can still try doing in Blender. But now let's get into the hard parts. Now this here, soft body simulations, and simulation is in general, but let's just look at soft body simulation. If you tried to do a soft body simulation in Blender, let me just get rid of this for a second. Let's just add a torus. There is a soft body simulation system in Blender, but it's really slow. I mean, let me just add a soft body here. Playback, you can see it works very okay. I just add a collision surface here, and if I remove this goal, interesting. Okay, this is, I guess there was an improve. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I was even surprised how fast it was. But when the processes start becoming, let me just see, because this is the new, I haven't tried out soft body simulations in the new version, so maybe they have improved a few things. I'm not really sure because they haven't been updating the physics simulations just yet. So yeah, it's faster than before, but again, maybe I'm not simulating that many things, that complicated things. But if you have tried simulating soft body simulations in Blender, you know, let me just try doing exactly what they're doing here and see how much it would take. Do something a bit more complicated here and see how that would look, how slow that would be. Okay, soft body. I think it's a bit faster than I last tried it. Maybe they have done some updates here. Yeah, but again, it's still, yeah, slow, and the results are not. Yeah, now it's really slow. Let me bring back the torus and see how that would behave here. Soft body. Switch off this goal. Yeah, you don't really have good control over your simulation. I mean, what else can you do here? Yeah, if I wanted to move this around, if you start simulating, maybe you can just grab it, but you're not really doing much there. You don't really have that much control over your simulations in Blender compared to Houdini. I mean, I've seen a lot of reels that show you how you can control your simulations in Blender, and it's night and day compared to Blenders. So again, let's do kind of a reaction video here just to show you the difference here. And I think, you know, let me just go to the comment that I read up. Kind of gave me a different opinion of the entire interview. But I'm not sure because there are two parts of this, and I'm not sure which one had that comment. So let me just see if I can find it on this here. Yeah, I think it's this here. It seems to me that you are bothered too much about whether or not Blender might become industry standard. And the point of Blender for me has always been that it has made reasonably powerful and fully featured 3D content creation available to everyone without the need for buying a costly license. And this at a time where there were no alternatives, are like the stripped down indie versions of commercial tools that are becoming available now, probably due to the pressure from open source tools like Blender. Also, you are ignoring the fact that Blender does not have to be at the bleeding edge in every way. There is nothing wrong at all. There is nothing wrong at all with using a specialized tool for a specific purpose, and not every company that uses Blender needs bleeding edge tools for everything they do. Instead, the reality seems to be that overly priced, overly expensive tools are commonly used for really simple tasks where Blender would be entirely sufficient. Yeah, so this is the comment that kind of gave me a different perspective over the entire interview, because mostly what Flipdomos and Blender and Andrew Price were talking about is that Blender is lacking being an industry standard for something like 3ds Max is with ArchViz, and Maya is with animation, and Houdini is with simulations. And this is a very good point. But where Blender lacks again, as he says, that it's kind of being broad, so that it can help any 3D artist, whether you're trying to go to in ArchViz or animation, you can always use Blender to do something good and nice without buying an expensive license. But where Blender has been lacking is in the simulation areas. So if you try to simulate anything, do really good simulations, and I've done really good, I won't say good simulations, but I think they're fairly reasonably good simulations, because I've tried out the Millennium simulation system. It has a lot of limitations, mostly in how you control your simulations, because most of it is just you hit play and or you hit simulate and play and pray for good results. You don't really have that fine control that other applications give you. I'm not sure why this is not loading. Okay, and that's where Blender is lacking. So it can handle anything else. It can compete with 3ds Max in ArchViz. It can compete with Maya in animation. It can compete with Cinema 4D. Actually, in motion graphics, still that's an area we're lacking. You can't really do good motion graphics in Blender, as at least to the standard of what you can produce in Cinema 4D. It's really hard to do what Cinema 4D does so in those two areas. In simulating, I can see some of the things I've been trying to simulate in Blender. You can see this was a storm, but most of it was just using particle system. It doesn't give you the control that you would want to get. Let me just play something. Turn off the sound here. I don't think there is even sound. Yeah, I'm downloading something, so my internet is a bit slow here. But anyway, I've tried doing a lot of simulation tests in Blender, and you don't really get the control you would want for some of these simulations. Most of the things are not obvious to you. You have to do a lot of not really experimenting, but you have to. I'm not sure how to explain this, but there is no easier way. Say if you want to do this, just handle this in this way, and it's not very obvious to how you can do simulations in Blender compared to other 3D applications, mostly like Houdini, and so you don't really get that control that you would usually want when you're doing simulations. So that's one thing that Blender is lacking. And I really liked this guy's comment. And I think, yeah, Blender should be exactly that, a tool that lets artists create whatever they dream up, and kind of bring them to life without worrying about whether Blender can do that or not. It doesn't really have to be the uh, it doesn't really have to be the industry standard, or it doesn't really have to compete with the biggest specialized applications. It just has to be good at some of the good enough to produce something usable, something good. But in areas like simulations, it has been lacking quite a lot, a bit lacking in motion graphics. Yeah, but so yeah, this wasn't really a comparison, because, as I said, it's the equivalent of comparing a Cybertruck to a Ford F-150. Blender really lacks in that area, in simulation and procedure modeling. So if we could get it somewhere closer to, it doesn't really have to beat Houdini in that area. It just have to be good enough, like it is in 3D modeling, to compete with any other 3D applications. How good it is in sculpting, it may not be better than ZBrush, but you're not really missing out anything if you're not using ZBrush, and it's not beating 3ds Max in doing archviz, but you're not really missing out too much if you're doing archviz in Blender. But comparing Blender with Houdini, then that's where the biggest gap is, and also maybe comparing it with Cinema 4D in terms of motion graphics, because I've also tried doing motion graphics in Blender. So in Cinema 4D, you can change text, you can play with text quite easily, and mostly when it comes to motion graphics, you are dealing with text quite a lot. So yeah, we are very limited in what we can do with text. You can edit it, you can use modifiers, maybe add an extrusion and what, but it's a bit limited. Hopefully these are things that can be at least. And the reason why I'm doing this video is that Blender development has always been in a feedback loop. So they develop what they get feedback on, and the more feedback they get, the more likely those tools get developed. So, and this is something I would like to have in Blender, because it's been lacking there. The particle system has not been updated in a while. The physics simulation, you don't really have a lot of control over that. Maybe animation nodes may come in and help with that, but yeah. So if you think this could be useful, if we share the video and maybe share your feedback with the developers and see what we can push in that direction. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. I'll see you in the next video.